Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we're discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. And if you are tuning in, you are probably smarter than the average bear. And I want to cover this article, which I had seen. Several people sent me this article, seen it floating around. Yes, the climate crisis may wipe out 6 billion people. This is a long article, and I'm not going to be able to read the whole thing, but I just kind of wanted to jump in a little bit and maybe talk about it a little bit. I don't know. I'm just kind of going to wing it. But this is from William Reese, September 18th. Carbon emissions may continue to rise. Polar ice caps may continue to melt. Crop yields may continue to decline. The world's forests may continue to burn. Coastal cities may continue to sink under rising seas, and droughts may continue to wipe out fertile farmlands, but the messiahs of hope assure us that all will be right in the end, only it won't. That's a quote from Chris Hedges. One thing the climate crisis underscores is that Homo sapiens are not primarily a rational species. When forced to take important decisions, particularly decisions affecting our economic security or socio-political status, primitive instinct and raw emotion tend to take the upper hand. This is not a good thing if the fate of society is at stake. Take hope, for example. For good evolutionary reasons, humans naturally tend to be hopeful in times of stress. So gently comforting in this world is this word that some even endow their daughters with its name. But hope can be enervating, flat out debilitating when it merges with mere wishful thinking. When we hope, for example, that technology alone can save us from climate change, as novelist Jonathan Franzen asks. So I've read like 4 articles in a row that basically reference Jonathan Franzen, If your hope for the future depends on a wildly optimistic scenario, what will you do 10 years from now when the scenario becomes unworkable even in theory? We needn't bother Roger Hallam with this question. He can scarcely be held up as a messiah of hope. Quite the contrary, Hallam, a co-founder of Extinction Rebellion, has been desperately warning of societal collapse for years. But on August 15th, in a memorable session of the BBC's Hard Talk, Hallam irritated multiple cultural nerves by claiming on the basis of hard science that 6 billion people will die as a result of climate change in coming decades. More specifically, our ruling elite's inaction and lies on climate change will lead to climate turmoil, mass starvation, and general societal collapse in this century. Normally, unflappable Hard Talk host Stefan Sakur just couldn't wrap his mind around Hallam's unyielding assertions. Sakur is no solitary skeptic. UC Davis research scientist Amber Kerr dismisses Hallam outright. The idea that 6 billion people are doomed to die by 2100 is simply not correct. No mainstream prediction indicates anywhere near this level of climate change-induced human mortality for any reason. Okie dokie. Similarly, Ken Caldera, senior scientist, Carnegie Institution, points out there is no analysis of likely climate change damage that has been published in the quality peer-reviewed literature that would indicate that there is any substantial likelihood that climate change could cause the starvation of 6 billion people by the end of the century. One key to understanding these scientists' rejection is their language. They assert that there is no mainstream prediction nor analysis in the peer-reviewed literature that climate change will precipitate such catastrophic human mortality. But keep in mind that scientists are reluctant, for professional reasons, to go far beyond the immediate data in formal publication. Moreover, organizations like the United Nations, including even its IPCC, I get tired of reading the name because it's really like a lot of syllables, are so dominated by economist concerns and bent by political considerations that extraneous noise obscures the scientific signal. Prominent climate scientist Hans-Joachim Schellnhuber, director emeritus of Germany's Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, argues that in these circumstances a trend towards erring on the side of least drama has emerged. And we covered that a few months ago. And when the issue is the survival of civilization is at stake, Conventional means of analysis may become useless. Exploring this argument, policy analysts David Spratt and Ian Dunlop conclude climate policy making for years has been cognitively dissonant, a flagrant violation of reality. So it is unsurprising that there is a lack of understanding amongst the public and elites of the full measure of the climate challenge. Yes. This is as much of a problem as anything else, is that there's just, well, lack of context, lack of understanding. Because people don't understand the actual implications, and scientists are part of that problem. It seems that in mainstream scientific publications and official reports, the truth about climate change and the fate of civilization may be buried deeply between the lines. Fortunately, there are other contexts in which experts are not quite so reticent and whose assertions echo Roger Hallam's. As much as a decade ago, a climate symposium organized to discuss the implications of a 4C warmer world concluded less than 1 billion people will survive. Here, Schellnhuber is quoted as saying, at 4C, Earth's carrying capacity estimates are below 1 billion people. Simple math says 6 billion or more have died by then. His words were echoed by Professor Kevin Anderson, who we all hold in great respect, of the UK's Tyndall Centre for Climate Change. Only about 10% of the planet's population would survive at 4C. And if you follow Guy McPherson at all, I don't know anybody else who says this, but I mean, he's basically said at 4C, there's nobody. 4C is a complete extinction event. I mean, I know other people that follow Guy's work and would echo that sentiment. I actually totally agree with that assessment. I don't see, at 4C, I don't see 500 million people being here. If anyone or anything at all. Because we're talking about the rate of change, not just 4C in and of itself, not 4C, achieving 4C in a couple hundred years or 1,000 years, 4C, in 2 or 3 decades or less, or we could even be seeing 4C at the end of this decade. We're talking about total annihilation. So, 1 billion people might be really conservative. 6 billion people dead might be really conservative, or, somewhat conservative at 4C. Similarly, in May of this year, Johan Rockström, current director of the Potsdam Institute, opined that in a 4C warmer world, it's difficult to see how we could accommodate 1 billion people or even half of that. There will be a rich minority of people who survive with modern lifestyles. I don't know how that's even possible, no doubt. But it will be a turbulent, conflict-ridden world. If everybody else is gone, how are people surviving with modern lifestyles? No. And again, I say no. Meanwhile, greenhouse gas concentrations are still increasing. There's that little humbug. We aren't even going in the opposite direction yet, let alone how fast we're going in the opposite direction. We're going negative fast in the opposite direction. Keep in mind that global temperatures averaging 4C means land temperatures would be 5.5 or 6C warmer away from the coast. That's why. Extinction most likely. Much of the tropics would be too hot for humans, and many densely populated parts of the temperate zone would be desertified. A 4C warmer world map suggests that as much of half of the planet would become uninhabitable. And is that just for humans, or is that for all animals, or all, is that how many living things uninhabitable for whom and for what? Most people would just ascribe that to humans, but think about, places where nothing is surviving. Very few things, little tiny bugs and some really hardy plants. It doesn't sound like a very good time. 4C World assumes business as usual or no new climate policies in coming decades. Note, however, that known and unknown feedback mechanisms could make 4C possible even with new politically acceptable policies in place. In a recent interview of this debate and related evidence, David Spratt asks and answers, so did Roger Hallam go too far? Not at all. There is serious research and eminent voices in support of his statements. The gross error in all of this are all those who cannot countenance this conversation, making forbidden calculations, which begs the question of whether all those would countenance any uncomfortable conversation. Population has long been a forbidden topic, despite being at the root of the ecological crisis. Where might a discussion of population ecology lead, and would its conclusions be any more politically acceptable? So I think you guys, this goes on for a while, but this is a good article. Let me get into some other things here. You know, I'm going to finish this article probably tomorrow because I want to keep this video to this length, but I just kind of wanted to get into this article, which I thought was well done. And thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.